25 says, who changed the truth of Elohim into a lie and worship and serve the creature more than the creator, who is blessed forever.
Okay.
Right? So what do you mean? Who changed the truth of the Most High into a lie? Everything you thought was in the Bible, some years of serious consideration has now shown you that it's not even in the Bible.
This is about the way that I walk. You got an issue about the way that I talk.
I'ma give it to you.
For the brothers outlined in the chalk, to mere rice chilling out in the park.
I'ma give it to you.
And they don't know the way that I feel. On a mission now to tell you what's real.
I'ma give it to you.
While you're looking for a proper pill, you want the gospel just to cop you a feel.
I'm not dealing with you.
I'm hitting on this track like it's magical. Place it with the classical, or make it international. You want the sympathetic, and I'm a little drastic though. Focus on my past, I'ma give you what you asking for. Save it for the fashion show. Talking about your church service, I ain't here to talk to you. Where the hell your pastor go? Lying through his teeth, preaching like he swear to God, misleading people. Now they act like they ain't scared of God. People looking for change, but choose to walk ahead of y'all. Make a tight beat, tell the truth in the song, and they head a nod. No change, no option of dodging flames. Dreams of copping the range, sneakers, outfits, and chains. Nigga prophets explain why demon prophets remain. One ticket to hell, my niggas hopping the train. Y'all got a name to put the top prophets to shame. His name and his fame is stopping the pain. This is about the way that I walk. You got an issue about the way that I talk.
I'ma give it to you.
For the brothers outlined in the chalk, to mere rice chilling out in the park.
I'ma give it to you.
And they don't know the way that I feel. On a mission now to tell you what's real.
I'ma give it to you.
While you're looking for a proper pill, you want the gospel just to cop you a feel.
I'm not dealing with you.
Didn't want to read it, receiving it from the Catholics. Mine couldn't conceive of believing it from the Baptists. The Hebrews wasn't white, so they running all out of actors. Searching through the chapters and seeing they got it backwards. Kindly tell the truth, and the raging them only escalated. Every word they hated, but none want to debate it. So what I'm supposed to do, let them fake it until they make it. Nah, bowing to the idols, my powers vowing to take them down. Now I believe in smoking while Christians drinking the potion. Everybody's high on that lie when the demon's spoken. Alive on arrival with Bruce, we all awoke with. Vision kinda blurry, he's realigning the focus. Gotta tell the truth, if it fills the room or it clears it out. Peers don't wanna hear, so I'm filled with a lot of fears and doubts. You gave me the heart, so it's time to put the action in. Praises that I give you on earth will only be practicing. This is about the way that I walk. You got an issue about the way that I talk.
I'ma give it to you.
For the brothers outlined in the chalk, to mere rice chilling out in the park.
I'ma give it to you.
And they don't know the way that I feel. On a mission now to tell you what's real.
I'ma give it to you.
While you're looking for a proper pill, you want the gospel just to cop you a feel.
I'm not dealing with you. All right, mic check 1 2 1 2. Hopefully everything is everything. Yeah, I had to, and I'm gonna have that. I had to pre-record. You know what I mean, Shabbat Bible study today. You know what I mean, so it is what it is until we can switch that whole arrangement where I can get my Sabbaths off. But it is what it is. Hopefully everything goes smooth, Most High willing. We get this message out. What in the world is a Christian Bible? All right. We concluded with part 1 last Shabbat. We're going into part 2 today. All right. I'm just going to read for the description again and the intro. What if one of the greatest misunderstandings in modern religion is not just how the Bible is taught, but what people think the Bible actually is? For centuries, millions have approached the scriptures under the assumption that it is fundamentally a Christian book, framed by Christian institutions, interpreted through Christian tradition, and belonging chiefly to the church. But that assumption deserves to be challenged. The scriptures did not fall out of the sky into the hands of Christianity. They came through Yisra'ėl, were spoken by Hebraic prophets, preserved by Yah's chosen people, and testify of Yahawashi, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus, who himself said in Matthew 15:24, I was not sent except for the lost sheep of the house of Yisra'eel. All right, Paul, he confirms the same covenant order when he says in Romans 3:2, because chiefly they were entrusted with the words of Elohim. All right. So before we debate doctrine, denominations, faith, law, or grace, we must first ask a deeper question. Is there really a such thing as a Christian Bible, or have we inherited a label that hides the true identity and context of the book? All right. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into our devotional reading. Okay, we're going to be coming from Psalms, the second chapter, right? Getting right into it. It says, "Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, uh, and the rulers take the counsel together, right, against Yahawah and against the Messiah, and say, let us tear apart their bonds and throw away their ropes from us. He who is sitting in the heavens laughs. Yahawah mocks at them. Then he speaks to them in his wrath and troubles them in his rage, saying, But I have set my kingdom on Zion and my set apart mountain. It says, I inscribe for a law. Yahawah has said to me, You are my son. Today I have brought you forth. Ask of me, and I make the nations your inheritance, and the ends of the earth your possession. Break them with the rod of iron, dash them to pieces like a potter's vessel. And now be wise, O kings, be instructed, you rulers of the earth. Serve Yahawah with fear and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the chosen, lest he be enraged and you perish in the way. For soon his wrath is to be kindled. Blessed are all those taking refuge in him. Right? The Most High's word is most certainly already blessed. All right. So let me go ahead and navigate my screen a little bit and get me back to where I'm supposed to be. All right. Hoping everybody's having a blessed Shabbat today. You know, in the order of the Most High, we are going to be obedient to what he says. All right. So we closed off last Shabbat, and I think I was getting ready to get into the conversation about the Gentiles taking over the scriptures. All right. So let me navigate myself back to here, dealing with Constantine's influence and the formation of Roman Christianity. Right. Reason why it's important that we go here first is because the word was given to the Most High's chosen people. I think we proved that thoroughly in last week's Bible study. Okay, it wasn't given to anybody. You can check Psalms 147 verses 19 and 20. He showeth his word unto Jacob, his statutes and judgments unto Israel. He has not dealt so with any other nation. Okay, he has not dealt so with any other nation. But here comes a nation. All right, a nation who subjugated the people of Israel. All right, in Judea, in what they call Israel. All right, they destroyed the temple, so on and so forth. They crucified the Messiah. They took over the religion, right? Made it a state religion, okay? And then taught you the scriptures, went and conquered the whole planet, all right? Raping and pillaging, subjugating, enslaving, all right? And murdering continents of people, indigenous people, under the banner of Christianity. And the evidence is, you know what I'm saying, the fact that everybody that they conquered have a set belief that they established. All right. First thing we need to understand is that he did not give the Gentiles the power to teach his word, to be custodians of his word. All right. So we have to reframe it. All right. Give it in spirit and give it in truth, and let you know that there's no such thing as a Christian Bible. Right. The thought of it being of Christian origin. All right. Teaching it from that perspective, it already leads us folks astray. It's already off. So understand that it was stated in the early 4th century that Roman Emperor Constantine declared Christianity as the official religion of the Roman Empire. Right, seeking unity within his vast territory, Constantine presided over the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. And what that did was it established the foundation of what became the official doctrine of the church. Right, this council, it blended Roman paganism with scriptural elements, signifying altering practices and theology to fit Roman customs and ideas. Right, that was already dangerous. All right, and that's why he gave his word to Jacob only. Right, there was no mixing in other religions. All right, to make it palatable for a broad audience of people. No, the Most High destroyed the whole planet and only saved 8 people. Okay. He looked at Noah and found favor in Noah and only saved 8 people and killed everybody else. Right. So why all of a sudden do you believe that in that Gentile teaching that the Most High is all inclusive when he will destroy the planet and only save 8 people? Right. No, you can't. You can't take it like that. You can't take it with a grain of salt. So a historically tighter way to frame what really happened in 325 AD, all right, is the point that Constantine did not make Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire. Rather, he legalized and favored Christianity through the Edict of Milan in 313 AD. All right, while the empire's formal adoption of the Nicene Christianity came later under Theodosius the First in 380 AD. All right, so even so, Constantine's role was still pivotal, all right, because after becoming the sole emperor, he convinced the Council of Nicaea in 325 to address the Arian controversy, all right, and to promote religious unity across the empire. What that did was it placed emperor power directly alongside doctrinal definition, okay, which later you will see in American history, what they call American history. With the forefathers, they had something that they wanted to do. They wanted to have the separation of church and state. Okay. What Constantine was doing was blending the power of the church with the power of the state. All right. So that's why you have a lot of bishops converting from their pagan beliefs, their beliefs in the sun god Apollo, all right, and calling themselves Christians in order to keep the position of bishop, or to keep their power of governance. All right. Just imagine, if you will, all right, the United States Senate. All right, you would lose your seat if you didn't profess to be a Christian. Okay, if you profess to be of any other religion, you would lose your seat in the Senate. All right, so in order to keep their seat, they converted to Christianity. That's what I mean by them blending the religion and the law. All right, so anyways, that matters for this Bible study, all right, because once imperial institutions began steering how the faith would be defended or defined, all right, it guarded, all right, and defined how it was spread. The scriptures were increasingly handled through the Roman ecclesiastical framework, all right, rather than the Hebraic covenant framework. Okay, that's why we try to get people to switch back to a Hebraic thought when they read the scriptures. All right. So the issue is not merely that Rome adopted Christianity. Okay. It's not just that Rome adopted Christianity. It would be okay if Rome adopted it, but didn't try to be the authority of it. It would be one thing, because, you know what I'm saying, Paul gave the warning not to kick or to boast against the natural branches. Okay. Understand, he says to the Yehudim first, all right, and then to the Gentile. So that order is already out of order once the Gentile is now teaching what was given solely to the set apart. All right. So it's not merely an issue that Rome adopted Christianity, but that later imperial churches, all right, they helped normalize the idea that the Bible, all right, could be treated as a Christian book, all right, as a Christian book in identity and perspective, right? Instead of the covenant word of the Most High Yah that was first entrusted to Israel. Okay, that was the issue. Okay, it would have been fine had they just converted, right? It would have been fine had they just continued to look to the Hebrews, all right, to find out when they were celebrating Passover so they could get in line, right? But to say, no, we no longer need to deal with the detestable Jews, and you know what I'm saying, and they're we're going to make up our own Easter day, things of that nature. That happened. We're not going to follow the detestable Jews and honor the Sabbath day. We're going to come up with our Sunday worship, right, and call it the Lord's Day, right? Not going to adhere to what the Bible says no more. That's the Christianity that people rock today and don't know the origins of it. So we have to bring it out. All right. So Constantine, merging of pagan traditions with the scriptures, introduced numerous doctrinal shifts. Okay, we're going to get into a few, right? We're going to get into a few, such as the change of the Sabbath observance from the seventh day to Sunday, all right? Historically, a day of sun worship. Understand that. Sunday was historically a day of sun worship, all right? This was a direct violation of the Most High's command to keep the Sabbath day, all right? Let's get Exodus chapter 20, look at verses 8 through 10, right? when he says, remember the Sabbath day, set it apart, meaning it's not supposed to be like any other day, right? Set it apart. And that kills the argument where folks be like, oh, well, every day can be a Sabbath. I can worship the Lord on every day, Monday, Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday. No, the Most High said, remember the Sabbath day and set it apart. It's not supposed to be like any day. He says 6 days you labor and shall do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to Yahawah your Elohim. All right. So the shift was not a small calendar adjustment, but a revelation. All right. It was an example of what happens when a Hebraic command is filtered through the Gentile Roman lens. Okay. So in 321, Constantine issued the first civil law making Sunday a legal day of rest. Right. And later church authorities went even further. All right. There's something called the Synod of Laodicea. Right. Where they instructed Christians not to Judaize by resting on the Sabbath, but instead to honor the Lord's day, which became Sunday, right? That matters because scriptures doesn't present the Sabbath as a church custom open to imperial revision. It doesn't give you the authority or anyone the authority to revision or repackage or reinterpret the command that the Most High gave in Exodus 20:8. All right. So the Most High, he grounded the Sabbath day in creation, right? He grounded it in creation when he said in 6 days, Yahawah made the heavens and the earth, right? In Exodus 20 and verse 11, okay? He grounded it in creation, all right? And it's like it rested on the seventh day. So and understand, if you will, when you go to Exodus 31 and 16, he also declared, all right, he says, and the children of Israel shall guard the Sabbath to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations as an everlasting covenant. Okay. He didn't give the authority. And this is a small example, should be all the proof that you need, all right, to stop treating the scriptures or the Bible as if it's a Christian Bible, right? And get back into trying to understand it from a Hebraic point of view. Okay. So the issue is bigger than Sunday versus the Sabbath. It's bigger than that, right? It is about who presumed to have authority to alter the practice and command of the Most High, Yah, that he defined in his word. All right. Understand that once that authority was moved from the Hebraic covenant order of Yisra'ėl, right, into the hands of a later Gentile institution, the Roman Church, men began acting as though the scriptures were a Christian book to be administered by the Roman Church rather than the Most High's covenant word given to his chosen people. Okay. That's why you're off. That's why you're off. All right. Let's get Daniel chapter 7 and verse 25, because that was the promise. That was the prophecy, right? That was the prophecy. Daniel chapter 7 and verse 25 says, and he speak words against the Most High, right? Whenever you hear Roman Catholicism, all right, say that we have the sanctity and the authority and the world goes along with it. All right, well, understand that the world is given into the hands of Satan, right? So, you know what I'm saying? It should be obvious that if you do something against the Most High and the world goes along with it, that it's not right, something's wrong. All right, let's read it again. It says Daniel 7 and 25, and he speak words against the Most High, right? Oh, let's not do what they're doing and honor the Sabbath day. Let's come up with our own Sunday. That's speaking words against the Most High. All right. He says, and he wears out the set apart ones of the Most High. Right. How did he wear them out? Understand it. There were people in that contemporary time who were fighting against the changing of the Sabbath day. Right. They were fighting against it. And then in the Edict of Milan in 321 AD, they were being put to death for honoring the Sabbath day. So he says, and he wears out the set apart ones of the Most High, right? And he says, and it is given into the hands for a time and times and half a time, right? So understand, The Roman Church is soon established itself as the final authority on matters of faith, right? Ignoring the Most High's or Israel's role in preserving and teaching the Most High's laws. So this act of replacing Israel's position, right, within the church aligned with the prophecy of Daniel, okay, which warned that powerful forces would attempt to change the Most High's set apart ways, okay, in which they did. Okay, so this is where the danger becomes unmistakable. Once a Gentile religious power set itself up as the final authority over doctrine, calendar, worship, and interpretation, it stepped into a role that the Most High never gave it, right? And in doing so, it mirrored the very pattern that Daniel warned us about in Daniel 7 and 25. All right, 7, Daniel 7 and 25. All right. So scriptures repeatedly warned against this kind of tampering. All right. Go to Deuteronomy chapter 4 and verse 2. Right. The Most High warned about that type of tampering. He says, do not add to the word which I command you, and do not take away from it, so as to guard the commands of Yahawah your Elohim, which I am commanding you. All right. And then go to Deuteronomy chapter 12 and verse 32, where he says, whatever word I command you, guard to do it, and do not add to it, nor take away from it, right? The very thing the Gentile Roman church did. They added to it, they took away from it, which is an abomination, okay? In Matthew chapter 17 and Matthew chapter 15 and verse 9, what did Yahawashi say, right? He rebuked the religious leaders who did what? They elevated their tradition over truth. Okay. When he says, in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrine the commandments of men. That's what folks do today in Sunday church. They teach doctrine, all right, from the commandments of men. Okay. When they say, oh, I can have a Sabbath every day. Every day can be the Sabbath. Or or we did away, or Jesus did away with the Sabbath and things of that nature. That's commandments of men, right? We already read where the Most High said you are to keep the Sabbath throughout your generations. It's an everlasting covenant, right? That's why they were not given the authority of the church. That's why you can't think that the Bible is connected in any way to Christianity. It is not, right? More than half of the things in the Bible they don't even adhere to. Okay. So anyways, when the Roman church assumed the power to redefine set apart times, to reshape doctrine and displace Israel from its scriptural role as the custodians of the Bible, right? It did more than create a lapse in administrative order. It helped institutionalize a system where the commandments of men, all right, overshadowed the commandments of Elohim, right? We see that to this day, okay? We see that to this day. They helped institutionalize a system where the commandments of men overshadowed the commandments of Elohim, right? That is the major reason why so many today read the scriptures as though they are the property of Christianity, right? Instead of recognizing them as the Hebraic covenant word that the Most High entrusted only to his chosen people, right? Let's look at the Catholic papacy's claim, all right? Them claiming authority and replacing Israel. Because after the council after Constantine, right? The Council of Nicaea and Laodicea and things of that nature, the Catholic Church consolidated power under the papacy. Right. What that means is you could call Constantine the first pope. Right. When they blended the religion with the power of government. Right. Became one entity. All right. And that claimed exclusive and interpretive authority as well over the scriptures. Right. So this new hierarchy structure with the Pope as the victor of Christ assumed a role that the Most High never intended for any man to have, right? No man was to be called the vicar of Christ. And the scriptures also warned you to call no man father, right? So, and anyways, By declaring the Pope to be the Most High or Yahawashi's earthly representative, the Catholic Church asserted itself as the sole custodian of the scriptures, overriding the divine order that was established through Yisra'ėl, through the chosen people. All right. So what this did was this development pushed the distortion even further. Okay. Because the papacy did not merely preserve an existing Hebraic faith, it claimed a universal teaching, because the word Catholic means universal. It claimed a universal teaching, all right, and governing authority that Rome itself describes in its own terms as vested in the Bishop of Rome, the Vicar of Christ, as the supreme, full, immediate, and universal power in the church, right? That's how far they took the authority, the claim, right? They took it further than any prophet in the Bible ever took it, right? They even took it even further than Christ and his disciples ever took it. Okay, that claim is reflected in the Catholic canon law, right? And in the Vatican II's called Lumen Gentium, Lumen Gentium. All right. And historians note that the medieval papacy increasingly asserted authority over doctrine, right? Councils and ordering of religious life, right? They took authority over all of that, right? From the standpoint of this Bible study, understand that is the real problem. That's the real problem. They were never given the authority to do these things. Okay. But that's the framework of the Christian religion that people rock today, and they don't know the history. Okay. So understand, a later Gentile hierarchy placed itself, all right, at the interpretive center of the book of the Most High, right, of the scriptures that the Most High had already entrusted to his chosen people, Yisra'ėl. And in doing so, help normalize the assumption that the scriptures were fundamentally Christian rather than Hebraic. Okay. Yet scriptures points men to one heavenly mediator, right? Not the vicar of Christ, what they call the Pope, not the bishops. He didn't give them that. That prescription is only given to Christ Yahawashi, right? That's why he says, no man may come to the Father except through me. That's Christ's role. So that was very presumptuous for them, right? They're already damned to hell for even performing this act, and this is what you follow without giving it a second thought. All right. The scriptures point men to one heavenly mediator, right, and one true high priest representative. All right, not to an earthly office that can override covenant order. Understand that. Go to 1 Timothy and chapter 2 and verse 5, right? It says, there is one Elohim and one mediator between Elohim and man, the man Messiah Yahawashi. All right. Okay. Then go to Hebrews chapter 8, look at verses 1 and 2, where it says, we have such a high priest who sat down at the right hand of the throne of the greatness in the heavens, right? And who serves in the set apart place, right? So there's no earthly authority given to folks to presume the position that Christ alone is given at the right hand of the Father. Understand that. That's blasphemy. That is blasphemy. Okay. So when the papacy elevated itself as the final voice over scripture, right, it did more than build church structure. It reinforced the false idea that the Bible belongs to a Christian mainstream instead of remaining the covenant word of Yahawah given through his chosen people. Okay, that's the real problem. Let's move along. All right. The church sought to limit access to the scriptures of the lay people. All right, for the lay people, right, declaring that only clergy had the authority to interpret the Bible. Right. Yahawashi, however, he clearly stated that his words were meant to be understood by all who seek the truth. All right. And that the Most High Yah is the only mediator. All right. And that Yahawah is the only mediator between Elohim and men. That Christ Yahawashi is the only mediator between between Yahawah and men. All right. 1 Timothy 2:25. Let's read it again. It says, "For there is one Elohim, one mediator between Elohim and men, the man Yahawashi Mashiach." All right. So, in many places, all right, and periods, the institutional church did in fact restrict ordinary people's access to the scriptures. Right. That's why they hid it in Latin, and nobody spoke Latin but those people and the clergy. Right. So understand, for example, in the Council of, how you say that? I'm gonna butcher this name. The Council of Toulouse, all right, Toulouse, something like that, and that would happen in 1229 A.D. Right? That happened in 1229 A.D. What that did was that council prohibited lay members, right, possession of most biblical books, all right, in the vulgar tongue, all right, or in the tongue that they spoke. Okay. So the Oxford Constitutions of 1408 forbade translation and the use of scripture in the vernacular without approval. Right? It was like saying if you were to read the Bible in your native tongue, all right, you could be punished. Right? To quote the scripture in your native tongue, you know what I'm saying? You could be punished for that. All right. So that posture stands in sharp contrast to the scriptures pattern, right? Because Yahawashi did not present the word as a private property of Gentile clerical class, right? But he pointed people back to the scriptures themselves, didn't he? Did he not? Go to John chapter 5:39. He says, "You search the scriptures because you think that in them you possess everlasting life." All right. And these are the ones bearing witness of me. Right. So likewise, and come on, if what if that would have happened back in Paul's days when Paul was preaching, right? But the Bereans came and they wanted to search out the scriptures to see if what he said was so, right? That whole setup by the Catholics would have destroyed the Bereans' ability to go and research any scriptures to see if what Paul said was so, and they would just have to take his word for it. You see the problem with that. That's problematic. That's problematic, right? Acts chapter 17 and 11. Okay, likewise, the Bereans were praised for not blind dependence on religious elites, but because they received the word with great eagerness, searching the scriptures daily whether these words were so. You weren't allowed to do that, all right, if they switched the scriptures into a language that you can't read, a language that you don't know. Right? Luke chapter 11 and verse 42 says, "Woe to you learned in the Torah, because you took away the keys of knowledge." Right? Exactly what they did. All right. So the issue is not simply access, all right, to a book. Right? They can have access to the book. You remember the movie, The Book of Eli, where they had access to the book, but the only one could read it was Eli because it was written in Braille? Imagine that. Imagine that. Right? So once later church systems treated the scriptures as something to be filtered through clergy alone, they strengthened the illusion that the Bible is a Christian book. All right? So let's get back to it. All right. Going back to 1 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 5, he says, "Wherefore there is one Elohim and one mediator between Elohim and men." All right, the man, the Messiah, Yahawashi. Right? Understand, the Catholic Church's assertion of control created a replacement theology that promoted the belief that the church had replaced Yisra'ėl, all right, as Yahawah's people, and they even claim that to this day. They call themselves spiritual Israel. God divorced his people. So. This shift, it profoundly impacted the scriptures, how the scriptures was taught, right? Obscuring Israel's role as the Most High's appointed teachers, right? So what this doctrine did, this doctrine of replacement theology, it turned the order of the scriptures upside down, right? Because instead of showing the nations being brought near through Yisrael's covenant, it taught that the church had become a new people altogether, displacing the very nation Yahawah chose from the beginning. Those ones who received the blessing from the seed of Isaac. Replace those people. The very thing that Jacob sought Esau for, wanted to trade his birthright for, right? Replace those people and that covenant, right? Understand that's what happened in Galatians chapter 3 and 29 says, and if you are of Messiah, then you are the seed of Abraham and heirs according to promise, right? Paul, understand, even in that scripture, never taught replacement. He taught joining, inheritance, and humility, right? You're supposed to be humble and come up under the authority of the chosen people and be taught how to worship the Most High Creator. No, they didn't want that. They wanted to supersede and replace those people and then teach the world how to create a God that they were worshiping, all right? Not in name, but in practice, before Christ even came on the scene, right? The prophets had already shown this order. When you go into Zechariah chapter 8 and 23, look at what it says. Zechariah 8 and verse 23. It says, in those days, 10 men from all languages of the nations take hold. Yea, they should take hold of the edge of the garment of a man, a Yehudite, saying, let us go with you, for we have heard that Elohim is with you. The Most High established the order. You're supposed to take the hem of the Yehudite, of the chosen, and follow him, because you know that the Most High is with him. That's what we were supposed to do. Look in 2 Ezra chapter 6 and verse 54. Right? It says, even the Apocrypha preserves the distinction, saying, the people also whom thou hast chosen, showing that Yah's chosen identity was not dissolved by the inclusion of others. No. So when the Catholic Church promoted the idea that it had replaced Israel, it did not clarify scripture. Right? It obscured the very people through whom the scriptures, the covenants, the Messiah came. Right? That's why so many now read the Bible as though it is a Christian book. We're just giving you the origins of how this mess happened. In truth, it's a Hebraic witness of the Most High. Right? Dealing with the Protestant Reformation. All right? They had a little pushback against the Roman Catholic Church, but they still weren't right. They still didn't get it. They just still didn't have it together. The Protestant Reformation, led by Martin Luther in the 16th century, emerged in response to corruption and non-biblical doctrines within the Catholic Church. Right? Luther's 95 Thesis famously challenged practices such as the sale of indulgence, all right, where people will go and pay the Catholics to erase their sins, right? That was the sale of indulgence. Questioning the Catholic Church's authority to grant salvation or absolution through payment. Okay, in other words, his stance on sola scriptura or sola fide represented significant pushback against the Catholic Church's monopoly over scripture and salvation. Yet, even here, the main point of this Bible study must remain sharp. The Protestant Reformation corrected some of the Roman abuses, right? But it still did not restore the scriptures to their original Hebraic framework, right? It kept a lot of those practices that they inherited from the Romans. Okay. Let's get it. Go to Isaiah chapter 8 and verse 20. Regardless of who did what, you can take this to the bank even today with pastors and preachers today. You can take this to the bank. Isaiah chapter 8 and verse 20, right? It says, to the Torah and to the witness, right? To the Torah and to the witness, to the law and to the testimony. If they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. All right. James chapter 2 and verse 24. You see then that a man is declared right by works, not by belief alone, right? Faith without works is dead. All right. The Most High gave us his law, statutes, and commandments. If you're not obeying the Most High, then, you know what I'm saying, those are the works to show who you actually believe in, who you follow, right? Acts chapter 26 and verse 22, it says, no other than what the prophets and Moses said would come. All right. So while the Reformation weakened the Romans' monopoly, All right. It weakened Rome's monopoly. It still stopped short of the further truth. The scriptures are not the possession of Catholicism or Protestantism. All right. Because there's no such thing as a truly Christian Bible. Right? They were still treating it as if it was a Christian Bible. There's only the Hebraic covenantal word of the Most High Yah, which later religious systems have too often handled without fully returning to its original order. Right? That's the rub. That's the problem. All right. I could get into this whole diatribe about sola scriptura, which means scripture alone. All right. This is correct in theory. It's correct in theory, but the Protestant church didn't follow it through. Right? They didn't follow it through. And then you also had sola fide, faith alone, same principle. Right? Cool idea. Sounds good, but they didn't follow it through. They did not follow it through. All right. Matthew chapter 7 and verse 21. Christ says, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heavens, but he who is doing the desire of my Father in the heavens. Right? Matthew chapter 19 and verse 17. And if you wish to enter into life, keep the commandments. Right? And then also in Matthew 5 and 19, he warned, whosoever then breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men so, right? Whether it be Catholic or Protestant, this is exactly what they were doing. They were teaching men so, right? To keep not to keep the commandments, that the laws are done away with. Why? Because they want to keep us in sin. They want to keep us in perpetual sin. So they have to teach that the laws are done away with, right? And then how else are they going to teach a word that they were never given authority to teach, but to distort it? Right? That's the natural occurrence. All right, let's get you some more scriptures. We already read Romans 3 and 31 last week, but let's read it again. Right? All right, this is what Paul says. Do we then nullify the Torah through faith? Right? God forbid. On the contrary, we established the Torah. All right. And John, he wrote and 1 John chapter 2 and verse 3 and 4, it says, and by this we know that we know him if we guard his commands. All right. And it says, and the one who says, I know him and does not guard his commands is a liar, and the truth is not in him. Like, this is all of the evidence that folks should have needed to know that the Roman Catholic Church is out of order, that the Protestant Church is out of order, that your church today is out of order. Right? Let's read it again. 1 John chapter 2, verses 3 and 4. All right. He says, and by this we know that we know him. Right? We know Yahawashi. He says, if we guard his commandments. Right? The one who says, I know him and does not keep his commandments is a liar. Right? First clue right there, that your pastor's a liar, and we didn't call him one, but the Bible did. He says, the one who says, I know him and does not keep his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. Right? About time. I'm gonna have to skate up out of here. All right, let's get back to it. So the problem is not only Catholic error or Protestant correction. The deeper issue is that both systems have often argued from the false assumption that the Bible speaks from a Christian point of view, and it never did. All right. The scriptures themselves speak from a covenantal, right, Hebraic world that they have no clue about. Right. That's it. All right. So while Luther sought to reclaim scriptural integrity, his doctrines laid the groundwork for interpretations that disregarded the Most High's commands. So what Martin Luther did is he took the scriptures that the Catholic Church said, hey, we're going to keep this in Latin and keep it away from the people. And then he had it written in German, which was his native tongue. And then from German, it was translated into English, translated into Spanish, translated to all of these people. Now, what this did was it created a powder keg of Christian doctrine, of religion. All right. Since now all of these people are reading the Bible in their own tongue, now they're coming up with their own interpretations of it. Why? Because the framework of the Hebrews was dismantled by these Gentiles. right? It would have been cool if the people were taught Isaiah chapter 28, verse 10, right? Line upon line, how to, you know what I'm saying? The real hermeneutics of the scriptures. Hermeneutics simply means the science of interpretation, right? If they were taught Isaiah 28, 9 and 10, right? To whom will he give doctrine? Whom will he teach? Who will he give knowledge? Who will he make to understand doctrine? He who was weaned from the milk, drawn from the breast. All right. For precept must be upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little and there a little. Right. So it wouldn't matter what language you could read it from if they had the ability to let the scriptures define the scriptures and not let Gentile authority, whether it be Roman or Protestant, tell them what the scriptures meant. Got to get it from the Hebraic perspective, right? So, and we could go through all of this. I'll skim through it and get us out of here. But this is the proliferation of Christian denominations and their doctrinal differences. We could get into that. We already know that we had the Catholicism versus Protestantism, right? From that was born the Baptists. Because remember, we talked about how Martin Luther, you know what I'm saying, established not the reinterpretations, but the copying of the scriptures in all tongues, right? So with all of these different tongues came a powder keg that splintered into all of these different religions, right? All of these different denominations. You didn't have that when it was under the Protestant or under the prophetic word of Israel, right? When the Israelites were the custodians of the scriptures, you didn't have a split. Whatever the Most High said, that's what the people did. Whatever he said, that's what he did, right? He said, honor the Sabbath day, they honored the Sabbath day. He said, keep the feast day, you know what I'm saying? He says, on the 10th day, you should be a lamb that's unblemished, so on and so forth. That's what they did, right? That's what they did. They did what the Most High said. But now, you know what I'm saying, since they took the authority of it, muddied up those scriptures, gave you and made you think that that's a Christian book instead of a Hebraic book, right? Then you had the Baptist, Methodist, Pentecostalism, Seventh-day Adventists, going to Mormonism, going to Jehovah's Witnesses, all of that. All right, the Protestant Reformation eventually led to an explosion of denominations, each with differing interpretations of the scriptures. Okay, that's a problem. There was no different interpretation of the Most High's word, right? So we're gonna leave it there. We're gonna leave it there. We're gonna try to pick it up. You know what I'm saying? We're going to try to pick it up again and get us into part 3. All right. We're going to get us into part 3. And then, you know what I'm saying? Just let the Most High just take us through it. We're going to take our time with it. But, you know what I'm saying? We just hope everybody got something out of this Bible study. If you did, we ask that you just hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube, we ask that you do so. And then also like, share, subscribe. I want to give a shout out to my Yakirium, you know what I'm saying, him and his family, Quam 12, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Brother Emmanuel Bronson, Sister Alice Bronson, thanks for sharing the video for everybody, because I notice a lot of people sharing it now. Sister Teresa Rooks is another sharer. Brother Brian Woods is another sharer. We appreciate you. Shabbat Shalom, Brother Eugene Sewell, Sister Champel, Sister Yakahana, Sister Yasatari, Sister Yahili. I'll be missing my Sister Yahili. Shabbat Shalom, Sister Yahili. To the good brother Jason, my sister Jessie, who shares the video as well. We just ask that, you know what I'm saying, you just enjoy the rest of your Sabbath, right? Get the Most High all praise and honor that's due to his name, you know what I'm saying? And don't take this Bible study light. It's a serious issue, and it's the main issue that people run into when it comes to understanding the will of the Most High and understanding how to worship the Most High in spirit and in truth. Shabbat Shalom, Brother Chick. I ain't forget about you as well. All right, so we're gonna let that be Bible study. And in the meantime, in between time, the Most High willing, we'll be back with another Shabbat Bible study. Hopefully, what in the world is a Christian Bible part 3, right? So enjoy the rest of your Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
My eyes on the prize, no lies for the youth. You gotta love them enough to tell them the truth. The reason why they killing and they dying in these streets, they don't know who they is. They don't know who they is, so preachers in pulpit, lying through their teeth. I can never hate them, but we do got beef. The reason why they lawless and they hate to hear the truth. They don't know who they is. They don't know who they is. Yahawah, we love you. Yahawah, we love you, we thank, we praise your comely name. This vessel is all yours. Take it over, have your way.